No, it's not just you.
Oh, I mean, this is a trend. You'll see in the Saints games over the last 4 to 5 years that one player will beat the Saints or two players, and they never make an adjustment on those players. If you go all the way back, I'm gonna be honest with you. This team has not looked the same since that San Francisco game in January of 2012. The New Orleans Saints have never looked the same since that game. And you'll go back to these games, when you rewatch the tapes, you'll find out it'll be the first half of the game, Amari Cooper was killing them. Then, of course, Breaux goes out, so they start throwing at Crabtree. And Frank and I was talking about this. I'd rather take my chance, and maybe somebody else beats me on that two-point conversion. Maybe they come across the middle if the other seven can't cover. But I'm not going to allow Crabtree or Amari Cooper, when I know those are Derek Carr's reliable targets to throw to on that two-point conversion. Even if I have to replay the down and hold him, and then we redo it again or something. But I'm not going to let those two beat me. And unfortunately, Dennis Allen called in the scheme he called in, and it did not work out.
Yeah, didn't work out, and hey, disappointed. But it's one of these things we're going to have to be able to game plan a little bit better, man. And could it be that Dennis Allen is kind of feeling his players through, but at the expense of losing a football game? That's a tough thing for the Saints fans to be able to muster at this particular time. All right, guys. Any game balls? Who gets your game ball, Diva?
Who gets my game ball?
Yeah. One person. One guy.
I'm going to go ahead and give it to Brandon Cook.
Okay. What about you, Remy?
I'd say Drew Brees.
Okay. What about you, Deuce?
I'm going to go with Willie Snead. He's not as flashy or as fast as Cooks, but he's becoming the new old reliable.
Okay. What about you, Frank?
I'm going to give it to the offensive line.
Okay. You took mine. And what about you, Professor?
I'm going to go with Drew Brees.
All right. Drew Brees. Okay, one note that we got to talk about, guys, and I've said this for the past 4 years. Pete Carmichael called the plays. Did you see anything noticeably different on how he called the plays and how the offense was ran? Deuce?
I think what we saw from Pete was a lot what we saw when Payton was out, and that was we still had a very effective offense, but we didn't eat enough clock. I mean, with the Saints team, you had Mark Ingram averaging almost 5 yards a carry, but the carry numbers were way too low for a team that had 14-point leads in the second half. And I think that's been one of Pete Carmichael's problems his entire career, especially when he was calling the plays all year long when Payton was out under that suspension. He doesn't run the ball enough, and quick scoring plays are beautiful. I said last night on Who Dat Confessional, I wouldn't take back the 98-yard Brandon Cook strike. However, that being said, you give an offense too much time that is now going against a defense where you just lost one of the best players that you had and take full advantage of it in the fourth quarter. Pete Carmichael has got to learn. He's got to start milking the clock. It's not about, quick strike all the time. You got to put away the game.
That is a good point. That is something on Pete Carmichael. Go ahead, Professor.
Can I just say this and piggyback off of what Rev just stated, and just something, Kyle, I've been saying for years. The Saints, and I say this all the time to Frank, this team does not play with wisdom. They don't play with wisdom. The Saints, when you have a 14-point lead, and of course, I'm sure they didn't know Brandon was going to be that wide open, but even then, after they got the lead, they do not play with smart, because sometimes, and Frank and I was talking about this, sometimes in your aggression, you're trying to be too smart and you're outthinking and you're not playing with wisdom. And Deuce is absolutely correct. This team does not play with wisdom. And I see it all the time. I'm like, they're not playing smart. And we score, and you have got to come to the realization, Coach Payton and Pete Carmichael, that the strength of this team is your offense. So now you have to find a way so that your offense wins these games, even if it means slowing it down. Whatever you got to do to keep six going and that clock going, but your offense now has to carry your team.
Well, let me piggyback off your piggyback real quick, because I think it's something Saints fans aren't going to like to hear because we love stats. But when Drew Brees had the lowest throwing yards totals of his Saints career? 2009 when he won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
The same year we were fifth in rushing. We love Drew to throw 5,000 yards, 40 touchdowns, but in reality, we're better when he throws 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns, and the game is balanced.
Right.
Good point. Good point.
And let me piggyback off all those piggybacks. Not only, Professor, you said, well, the strength of the team is the offense. So that means the weakness of the team is the defense. So you want to keep your strong part of your team on the field as much as possible and your weak part off. So, again, that's why I was thinking the same thing. The long touchdown to Cooks looks beautiful, but I would have preferred if it had taken a little bit longer and taken some more time off that clock and kept the defense off the field, because that is the weakness of the team. And I would like to see more of those long, sustained drives where you're not rushing to get to the line of scrimmage and you run the play clock down to 3 seconds before you run the play and get a few first downs, and even if you only score 3 points, you pulled like 6 minutes off the clock. That's what I want to see.
Well, since everybody riding the pig, I might as well go for a lap or two and get my 2 cents in. I just want to say, when you think back to that 2009 year, which we just, kind of briefly elaborated on, the Saints' offense was so explosive and they would have such a big lead. 2 things happened. They made the opponent become one-dimensional, meaning they had to pass to try to keep up with the Saints. And 2, because the Saints had a lead, their rushing yardage would go up because that's when you would see more balance. Obviously, when they got the ball, they wouldn't have to pass as much because they wanted to burn clock and make it even more difficult for the opponent to come back. The Saints' offense has, had its hiccups, but the philosophy has not changed. The problem is the Saints' defense can't keep their opponents from scoring. So, they had a down year last year, but I could see this team averaging 33, 34 points a game. It's just that explosive. But when you can't keep the opponent from scoring, the opportunity to rush the ball goes down because now you're in a track meet. It's almost like you're asking the Saints to run, a 100-yard sprint every time they get the ball because they need to score quickly and then make that opponent become one-dimensional. And I don't see Pete Carmichael or Sean Payton, regardless of who's calling the game, the philosophy of the team has not changed. And it won't change. They're trying to address it by improving the defense, which has just been a slow process that we've seen so far.
Okay. Good points, guys. Good points from everyone. But, yeah, Pete Carmichael is not as balanced in his play calling. He does a sharper job calling in the plays. You notice there weren't any delays
he's better than Sean Payton. May not be. He's better than Coach Payton.
Yeah. There were no delays. Drew Brees got the play in, lined those guys up. They were ready to go a lot faster. Sometimes with Sean Payton, he's waiting 14 seconds before the play calls. So that's something that could be tweaked through the season. I'm pretty sure Sean Payton is going to address that with him as far as the running game is concerned. But I've got to mention this, guys. What is up with these players, and what's up with what's happening with these players? Colby Fleener. Oh my goodness. One time he caught the ball, but he was targeted 4 times. He only had 6 yards in receptions. This guy is invisible in the games. He was invisible most of preseason as well. Only if it were not for some of those seam routes, we would not have known who Coby Fleener is. I am concerned. He was in on 56 of 69 offensive snaps, and you only caught one football. Do you think this is something that's going to be a continued trend with the Saints, Diva? Do you think we're going to see more of Coby Fleener, or do you think this guy is just disconnected with Drew?
I think there just hasn't been that build of chemistry, that level of comfort built just yet. I don't know if once he signed on, they took some time to try to work with each other this summer. I don't know what happened this summer at all, but it just seems in other situations there was more time spent to try to work on having a certain type of chemistry with each other, and that's the one thing. Whether it was with what's his name, Jeremy Shockey, when we had him, there were those summers where they would actually work out together, even up until Jimmy Graham. But that's the biggest thing I see. In certain instances, there's not chemistry, and maybe that, and unfortunately, it's going to be either the plus or the minus of the season to see how soon they can get it together and get the wheels in motion to try to be on the same page.
Yeah. Well, I was reading Barry Hurst's, the editor of the Big Easy Believer, and, he stated something in today's article. He said there had been reports that Fleener was struggling to grasp the New Orleans Saints playbook, and since he's come into NOLA, you kind of see that this is the case. But you had all training camp, guys, to work with Drew Brees. Drew wasn't holding out. you were right there.
Frank and I talked about that offline. He and I was talking about that earlier. The Sean Payton's playbook is not easy to pick up at all. And I was telling Frank, this is my concern with these younger players and this new generation of football players. They're not doing the extra effort. I do not feel these younger players now, when they finish practice, if I'm struggling and I'm going to come up to you, Drew, I'm trying to learn this playbook. Can you stay after? Can we do catch and throw? Can you work with me or what have you? Or are they leaving practice and running to social media and going out to the bars and everything else? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that these players, to me, do not have the same dedication from the players we watched growing up watching football in the 70s, 80s, and even early 90s. And that's what Frank and I was talking about. You're not just going to come to the New Orleans Saints offense and don't think you have to put in extra work, because that Saints playbook is not an easy playbook for you just to pick up and think you're going to. It's not like the, Indianapolis Colts where he came from, or somebody like the Baltimore Ravens and stuff. So you're seeing just what Sharita alluded to, and a lack of chemistry. It may take most of this season for him to learn, because the Saints, they really have had success with their tight ends, Jeremy Shockey, Jimmy Graham, Watson, and, this is very strange that, right now, from what we've seen through preseason now, that their tight ends, and I don't know what's going on with Josh Hill, why he has not stepped up. I know he's injured, but why he has never stepped up to the plate like he did the first year he played. And so this is something we're going to keep eyes on, because sooner or later you're going to run across a team that has cornerbacks that may be able to, cover Cooks and Snead, especially when we play the Denver and Seattle, and you're going to be really reliant on that tight end. Now once Coby Fleener gets on board, I'm like, Frank, this team is going to easily score 34 points. They have all the weapons and the makings at a younger version of that 11 offense. They just have it all across the board. It's just a matter of now, how do you slow it down a little bit if you get a big lead, because your weakness is your defense. So once Fleener gets on board, really watch out for the Saints then.
Okay. Let me throw this at you, Remy. Stephon Anthony only had 13 snaps, your former number 1 draft pick. He was only in the game for 13 defensive plays. What do you make of that?
That's